every single thing that this extraordinary panel said. So I am really honored to be here with really not just leaders here locally or here in New York State, but here in the country. I just want to emphasize something that Marla said, which is the entire country is, no, it's not that the entire country is paying attention, it's the privatizers are paying attention. And basically what we are capable of doing here in New York will have impacts in every single corner of the country and internationally. And it is actually I believe, one of the most extraordinary, truly bottom-up citizens movements that we've seen in recent years. I know we've talked about probably all that ESSA does not do. Okay, good. And all that the sort of new New York schema does not do. But I hope, again, I'm sorry if I missed this, but I hope you have taken a moment, and if not, I want you to join me in giving a standing ovation to this group here in talking about what has been done. Because on the state level, instead of being on the offensive, the privatizers are on the defensive. And on the federal level, you have relocated. Basically, have you guys talked about this? That one of the things that ESSA does is it takes away some of the state mandates, so that the response of the federal. This is very important. If you're talking to a state official, 2 years ago they would say, well, we can't not do this testing, because if we don't, I know I'm coming in late, but basically here's how it used to work. This much education money, this much of it's from the federal government. This tiny little bit from the federal government is then used to effectively say, all of you in the states have to do basically what Bill Gates thinks is a good idea, right? The money isn't necessarily worth it. It's basically, mandates without a lot of funding, but there's just enough funding and there's so much starvation at the school level that it becomes very hard to say no, okay? So 2 years ago, if you asked a state official, what they might say is, I share your concerns. I guess you heard that. I share your concerns. I hear you. I've heard this. But we can't afford to turn down this precious federal funding that will really hurt our schools. Okay? The really big thing that ESSA does is it takes away that response. Okay? And basically, on the charter level, we still have a lot of problems. On the privatization, we still have a lot of problems. On the testing level, the states basically are free to do what they want. Okay? So this is incredibly important for political organizing and speaking, because it means then that answer isn't there. And if somebody supports high-stakes testing, testing-based teacher pay, they are supporting it because they think it's the right idea, not because the federal government is making them do that. And that is a major victory of union organizing, BATS organizing, leaders organizing, teachers organizing. So please join me in congratulating. But others of you haven't. I just want to talk about one of the reasons I care so much about making sure we take this fear and anxiety and testing out of the classroom, this form of testing out of the classroom. My first job out of college was as a special education teacher's aide in a small rural public school. And one of the kids I was working with was in his 5th foster home. I was working with him on math and writing. 3rd grade, tested 3 years behind on both math and writing. Great classroom teacher. It was a system where I was working inside the classroom. very calm, very loving and respectful of the kids. And when I met him, he told me that he was stupid and had no imagination. All the time. So when in doubt, if there was something he couldn't do, he just brought all this tightness to the classroom. He was a little ball, and he said, I'd say, you know, why don't you try this? And he'd say, I'm stupid. I'm stupid. And sometimes we had to leave the classroom because he acted up. So when we were working on writing, what he would do is take his pen, and the assignment was write what you had for breakfast this morning. And he would just take his pen and go like this all over the paper. And then I'd say, well, okay, then next week it would be, or next couple days later, do you have, what do you want for your birthday? And he would say, I don't have an imagination. And he would bring it up himself, even when I didn't bring it up. So eventually, we did this for a couple of weeks, and eventually I would just start reading out loud his scribbles, you know, like cereal. And I really like fairy tales. Personally, Einstein once said that if you want a child to be intelligent, read him fairy tales. And if you want a child to be really intelligent, read him more fairy tales. So I would often, when he would scribble, I would just read fairy tales. Like there's a princess and a green-eyed monster, and he started to really look forward to the writing period where he would scribble and I would read out loud. And so eventually, of course, I took a piece of paper and I said, I'm going to write a story this week, and I went like this. And I asked him to read it out loud. And he'd just been reunited with his younger brother in this foster home, and he said he started telling a story about these two trolls that built a little ship and took the ship from island to island in search of their home. And he was really proud of these stories that he would write, and eventually I would have him write down my stories that he was reading out loud. And during that time, we could see, the classroom teacher and I could see that he was really getting better at math, too. And what he told me is that the trolls slept in his knuckles. And if he cracked his knuckles, they would wake up, crawl up his arm, crawl into his ear, and tell him the answers to the problems. So this is from the kid who has no imagination. He was like a tuning fork for stress. If he was in the classroom and there was anxiety in the classroom, he could sense that, and he would just shut down again and turn into a little ball again. And so I think of him for a whole bunch of reasons. One, if his classroom teacher felt like her ability to make a little extra money and fix the bathroom depended on how he was doing on his math tests, he would feel that. And if his classroom teacher felt like if he didn't do the tests in the regimented way that they were required, it was going to affect her overall evaluation, not because she cares about the bathroom, but she cares about how she's evaluated, because she's a professional who's proud of herself and proud of how she is perceived. That would bring stress and fear into the classroom and change what he was capable of doing. And the other thing is, no Common Core test says reading scribbled fairy tales out loud helps with math. But in fact, what he did is what we all do. We all learn that way. I mean, maybe there's some exceptions, but we're humans, we're not widgets. And it doesn't follow in a straight line. So standards, sure, that's fine, that's one thing. But when you basically expect that kids are going to fall in a certain regimented line, they're never going to get the trolls in the knuckles that help them with math, or any other way that's going to help them with writing. And a year isn't everything. A year is just a year. But if that kid, which I believe he did, can have elementary and high school with teachers who are free to actually pay attention to what he needs to get to where he needs to be, so much more is possible than if he's jammed into a widget box, shut out because he's doing bad on tests, told that he's done badly, and the teachers are told that he's done badly because of his own performance. The other reason I care about that is, and tell that story, is because if a kid says they have no imagination, you know they're lying, right? Yeah. Like, it's just not true. So why does a child say he has no imagination? Someone told him. Right. Why does a kid say he's stupid? Because someone told him. I kind of feel that way about our country sometimes. So if we are saying that we can't actually get arts and sports and social work into every school, that's not true. That is because someone is telling us that we are stupid and we have no imagination and we don't know what kids actually need. And they're telling us that for a reason. Okay? So I like to think we are in the middle of this good earthquake in education. We've been under a bad earthquake for a while. Where because of teachers and parents speaking up from the picket in the pines to the incredible organizing, that actually these voices, this kind of imagination is coming through, and I think it's absolutely critical. It's not just critical for education. I think it's critical for democracy. There's a big, whether you want to call it lie, or there's a big wrong idea out there that in schools everything should be measured by the kind of workers we're producing. That's important. It's really important to give children the skills that they need to be able to succeed in whatever kind of economy we have in 10 or 20 years. This is why I'm comfortable calling it a lie. It's a very dangerous half story. But these are kids and people. And a substantial part of education is also educating for the future citizens of our country. So when we think about education, I think we have to not only fight back on their terms, the privatizers' terms, like actually high-stakes testing doesn't work, for instance. Charter schools don't outperform public schools. Those are fights that I'm happy to have and happy to talk about. But I actually want to raise up our imagination and say, we have a different vision of public education. Skills are a part of it, and they're an essential part of it, but these are whole people, and we are enabling them to become future thoughtful citizens in our democracy. So why is there so much effort to privatize? I mean, this is a real puzzle, right? Okay, I see people doing this. Some of it, I think, is sort of a complicated, if not checkers game, where teachers, when they stand up, as you have seen, are extremely powerful on a whole range of different issues. And that part of the reason you see so much hedge fund, dark money, big money attacking teachers' dignity and teachers' right to organize is because if you can actually really undermine that, you undermine this key feature of our whole democracy. So that when you're talking about tax policy, I want to have the teachers at the table. When you're talking about infrastructure policy, I want to have the teachers at the table. But I think that there's a handful of extremely wealthy interests that would be very happy if the teachers were not at the table for all of those fights, not just the education fight. Which is why I think this is about something bigger than education policy, as if you can be bigger than education policy. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Then going a little bit sort of micro, but not micro, and so essential is, in the long term, the quality of our education system is dependent on, I believe kids thrive when teachers are trusted and respected and bring joy, their own love of learning, their own joy, their own desire to teach into the classroom. And what we have now, unfortunately, is a growing ethos in which teachers are sort of treated like suspects. Like, until proven otherwise, you're probably just trying to make a buck. Which doesn't make any sense. Because that's not why teachers go into teaching, clearly. So I think, besides the particular policies, we want to fight against, for an ethos where education is about citizenship as well as skills. And also for an ethos where we see that the real future of our democracy, of our economy, of our polity, of our public life, of the existence of a public itself, depends in some part upon teachers being respected in their jobs and supported in their jobs. Teacher union all the time, okay? And that doesn't mean we think every teacher is great all the time. None of those, that's silly. That's not a serious argument. It just means that our ultimate goal is to have kids in a classroom with teachers who have the freedom and support that they need to really do the teaching that they need to do. With the teachers as suspects model, we're having a harder time recruiting teachers. And so, even if, look, there are quote unquote school reformers, the quotes around the word reformer, who I actually think are come at it honestly. That really believe this is the way to go. It's a top-down way. I don't like top-down ways. I don't, basically, I don't think any way to make education policy is in a small room without teachers involved. But I think that there are some that come at it genuinely. But they should at least see the devastation in recruitment and morale among teachers, and see that it's absolutely undermining those, those initial, in some cases, deeply held views that this is better for kids.
That's part of their plan. That's part of their plan. They're going to create a shortage, and then you're going to have Pearson University providing the teachers.
So, the deep, I actually think there's a mix, to be honest. I think some people hold it honestly, and some people, it's more of a chess game, And I think there's a blend which can make it complex, right? But I do see, I wrote a column about a year ago about, sorry, what's your name?
My name is Rose Rudnitsky. I'm a professor emeritus of this institution.
Oh, great.
And I'm the dean of the School of Education in New Jersey.
Thank you. Yes. So as the dean said, I wrote a column last year basically about the Hunger Games of our education policy. Just, first, starve, test, and punish. And by draining support and morale out of schools, you then turn around and say, oh, the schools aren't working, now you have to privatize. And that sequence is not a sequence we can allow to continue. I'm pretty much done. I'm just so proud to be here with you, proud to be here with these really, truly some of my heroes.
We're proud to have you.
Yeah.
We'll have questions and answers for a few minutes now. Do we have a mic? So we have a mic that we'll pass around. If you'd like to ask a question, please keep it brief. If you want to direct it to a particular person, say so, and otherwise, anyone can respond. So, this gentleman. Are you going to bring it around?
Yeah.